Hi, everybody. I'm Scott,
And I'm Luke.
And I'm Jonathan.
and this is the No Way to Hollywood podcast. Thanks for joining us.
This is indeed the No Way to Hollywood podcast.
And I think my internet might stay on this time.
Woohoo! Jonathan, can you give us a quick update on what's the happenings in Hollywood?
The big news from the last week, from what we said, I just wanted to let everybody know, if you don't know, a couple pieces of information. Tenet has been announced to be released first overseas, about the end of August or so, and then 2 weeks later in the U.S. in any theaters that are open, in any cities that will allow theaters to be open. They will release it then. AMC Theaters has stated, if I understand correctly, that they will be opening sometime in the middle to the end of August, regardless, wherever they can. That is sort of what the world is looking like. So yeah, Tenet's going to be released overseas first for 2 weeks at least before anybody in America can see it in theaters. No streaming, anything like that. And yeah, that's just what's happening with theaters right now.
See,
Cool.
When Scott asked you if you could give an update on Hollywood, I expected you to say, "No way!"
That's really good. I'll have to remember that next time.
Okay, so
No way!
the fact that this movie, like as we just talked about, like is like the tentpole movie of this year and the entire industry going forward. This American film is being released internationally first.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's being hailed right by Hollywood. It's being hoped for as like the savior of theaters and the savior of the industry in a sense. And yeah, we're as Americans, we don't get it for 2 weeks at least. And I mean, if you care about spoilers and you happen to be on the internet a lot, good luck to you. You're in trouble. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy what we've walked into. And yes, from just a box office standpoint, if Tenet succeeds in this overseas, not only making their money back, but making a profit and doing well, this further indicates to the industry that the American market is just not that important.
Well, it's interesting too, right? Because Parasite wins Best Film in America, and then one of our, biggest films for film going forward is going overseas first. How is it normally with an international release for a major film like a Christopher Nolan or like Infinity War? Don't they normally release them
all at the same
globally?
Time.
Yeah.
Everything goes out everywhere all at the same time, except for James Bond movies. James Bond movies get special privileges in the UK first, because it's a UK thing. And then a week or two or month or whatever later, it goes out to the rest of us.
And it's not like spoilers are really that big for James Bond.
Generally, he's going to sleep with a few girls and kill some bad guys and, whatever.
Use a couple cool gadgets.
Maybe. Yeah, that's generally what's going to happen. So,
but this time, the gadget was a different gadget.
It's the word Tenet. It matters and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's fascinating.
In light of that,
okay, hang on. I got one more here.
I'm just going to stop trying.
I guess that the film industry is saying no way to Hollywood.
Hollywood is saying no way to the American market.
Which makes me say no way to Hollywood. I don't know. Okay.
Hey, Scott, where should we go next in this conversation, man?
Like I said, I've stopped trying. So good luck, guys. Have fun.
Oh man, we lost our moderator. Hey, Luke.
It was working so well.
Well, before we started this episode, we had talked about a conversation tonight about the differences in a few of the mediums that we have within motion pictures. So we absolutely talk a lot about film, but in the minor that I have from the University of Southern California, it is a cinema television.
That's gonna say plug.
I mean, if you want to go to the best film school in the world for college,
are we splitting this check you're going to get from USC or what? I want some of that money.
I already gave them way too much of my money. I don't know that they're going to give it back to me now. So tonight, let's explore a little bit of the differences between film and television
So what's your
and
minor? You have a minor in
cinema television.
Okay, so you actually know stuff about this. That's awesome.
Was your major not related to TV at all, Luke?
I was in the I was in the radio, television, film department studying motion picture production. That's it.
Jonathan, was your degree have any kind of
Uh,
specificity?
Specificity, I had a degree about fine arts in film video production with an emphasis in writing directing.
Okay.
So I can go anywhere.
Anywhere. And I won't try and sing again. I'm sorry, folks. All right. So let's try and start out by defining film versus television. And there is going to be some historical look at this from the standpoint of film has been around for a very long time. And typically, film has been different things, but has kind of settled into, at this point, a form of storytelling that is anywhere from an hour and a half to 3, maybe 4 hours of telling a single story. Yes, we have sequels and the episodic nature of something like Star Wars or even a Star Trek. However, it is still very much a this length of time, single story that is a start to finish in and of itself. In television, we can have some of that. However, because there is a greater frequency at which the stories come out, some shows have chosen to continue storylines where others choose to tell individual stories related in the same world. So there is some difference within television and how it is approached. How else would you guys define some differences between uh, film and television, cinema and television?
Well, and one of the things for me, just from a tech standpoint, is like we call it film, but like very few people shoot on film anymore because we don't do that. And like when we first started with film, it was just any old motion picture that we can show, and you had to go to a place that had the technology to project it. So that was something that was special, right? Like, and that's kind of the foundation for theaters, like your Nickelodeons and things like that. But now we're like making movies on our cell phones, and some Yahoo is doing it vertically. And so like there's this whole aspect of filmmaking that is kind of disconnected from its base word to now be all about just any kind of technology. And then you get into like motion picture or computer graphics and things like that for films where you're not even really filming anything at all, right? But I agree. It is a limited story to a typical, like, couple hour long single form thing, maybe spread out over a connected universe or whatever, now that Marvel's done it. But it's typically like, here's a story in this thing. But that's interesting because truly, how is that different from like HBO doing a 2 hour like pilot episode for something?
Well, as you asked about what are the differences in the mediums, I should say, I think similarly to you, Luke, in the sense of we use the word film a lot and films, and that's cool, and there's good stuff there. But if I want to be more precise with language in the current day, I really like the idea of using the word cinema. I think cinema is a great word for us to use because it comes from the idea of being in a cinema, being in a theater, projecting it in that way, having that intended format as its use. Movies obviously have a like you said, Scott, hour and a half to maybe 3 hours, and if you're really big and epic, you might have a 4 hour epic like Ben-Hur or something like that. And TV has gone through such a crazy journey from being these these old black and white variety shows and then dramas and stuff that could be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour to there's a lot of keeping it around 30 minutes to an hour, I would say, in most of television episodic production. Even to today, with streaming being the platform, it's still, here's an episode, it's going to be somewhere around an hour typically, even if you don't put yourself within a strict standard. It's usually around there, or 30 minutes, one of those two, half hour or an hour long show. And it's, you used to have a lot more structure in the storytelling in an episode, because it was a network television show and you had so many ads you had to hit. So it had to be this many minutes long, and you had to get through all your acts and all your storytelling in that time. And maybe if you're really cool, you could do a 2-parter, right? And like you said, the storytelling can be, for some shows, it's just sort of like comedy event of the week with the same characters, or it could be an ongoing story where you've got the West Wing in the early 2000s. That's network television, but it's got some of those kind of episode of the week things happening all the time. But there's through lines. There's always your pilot episode of the season that's got main story stuff, and then you got your sort of your mid-season finale big stuff, and then you got your end of the season finale big stuff, storytelling wise, and everything in between can maybe hint at that here and there. But it's all, there is an overarching structure, but it's just sort of a nice high level thing. And then you've got all these sort of event of the week things going on in between all of that, which is why it has been said that movies are about a world that you get to go to and see what's happening, and television is about characters. Characters are what make television live and die, because you always come back for the characters, especially if it's episode of the week kind of thing. Whereas movies need good characters. You're going into a world, you're going into an event, you're going into there's this one thing you're doing potentially. You may not ever come back to that world. There may never be a sequel. So it's not wholly dependent on you loving the characters for the movie to work.
Okay, so Scott, being the person who knows something about this, we're talking about like storytelling, but like obviously the news and the Weather Channel and the History Channel, which isn't about history and discovery. Okay, but like how does that fit? Because that's also edutainment, or just keep you hooked so that you watch more ads. Like what is this?
Also, keep in mind that Scott is speaking directly for USC, and that he has USC's position on television. Now, go ahead.
I love you guys, but thanks for putting me in a box that I don't want to be in. I'm gonna go get my old TV out, cut out the monitor, and like just pop it on as a hat, walk around and see what happens for a while. I think.
Dude,
there you go. Go to
that's
USC
television
and put a TV on your head.
Performance art. Oh, I love it.
I do not officially speak for anyone else's position than my own. And thanks to Jonathan, I needed to take time to actually say that.
Don't worry, Scott. I can speak for you too if you ever need that.
What was the question again, Luke?
Okay, television, right? We're obviously talking about like the storytelling aspect of it.
Right.
But like television is so much more than that. You've got weather and you've got news, whether it's news or not, and there's all sorts of interesting things about that. We've got like History Channel, which at this point in time is just aliens. Like what is this?
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, there, and I think it's interesting because the history of television has lent itself to come into a form that is very similar to radio, where it's the place you go to get information, which we don't do anymore. I don't watch the news anymore. If I'm going to get news, I'm just going to go read whatever I want to read on the internet, right?
Word.
Or go find that comedian person who like sums it all up for you, like a really simple answer in 20 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's very simple to take television. Of course, now that Luke only watches like YouTube, that's pretty much like watching television, because that's what you do, Luke, right?
Yeah, I'm a YouTuber kind of person, watching YouTube and then making content for YouTube that like 6 people watch. Thanks for watching. But there's a difference, right? Like YouTube is specifically like on demand. I choose what I'm looking for. It tries to guess what I'd like, so that I keep watching and then hopefully watch ads, which I block them, thank goodness. Whereas television, like, you have to watch whatever they feed you, or you have to TiVo it. So,
Right. Well, and the thing with television, though, is it is also I can show up at this time either every day or once a week consistently to see the thing that I want to see, where YouTube has taken it and made it whenever I feel like sitting down, I can type in my phrase and find the content I'm looking for.
Absolutely. And Netflix has taken hey, you have to show up every week to now just binge it whenever you're ready.
Well, and don't forget about DVR programming, on-demand programming, even with cable or what. Like, there's 1,000. TV has gone through a huge journey of how you can access it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the news. How does it relate to this?
Well, the news is simply a set of stories that talk about the world in which we are currently existing. So it is still an episodic of let's sit down and find out what happened in the world today kind of a thing.
Oh my goodness. So the news is the original reality television.
Yes.
But reality television is scripted. And unless you buy into various conspiracy theories about governments and stuff, generally the stuff they're covering shouldn't be scripted. This is more just...
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
news reporting is like you.
Well, sure.
Little,
but like, what you say about it might be a script, yeah, but like you're still covering the fact that something horrible happened in X or Y place that no one necessarily saw coming.
Wag the dog, man. Wag the dog.
Well, that's a movie. It's a whole other thing.
It's actually a decent movie too.
I know.
Maybe I'll make that my recommendation later on.
Anyways, I was like, hey, I have one.
Oh my goodness. All right, so I guess my question to you guys now, that we've kind of explored a little bit of what television is in relation to film, what are the stories that you would choose to tell only on film or only on television? I should say only on cinema, according to Jonathan, and only on television / YouTube / whatever.
Streaming. Yeah. What's a good? Yeah, we should come up with a good word for that. Because the other thing I wanted to really point out about the medium differences is that one was built for a giant screen, a theater screen. That's how it's composed. It's how it's made. The other one is being built for a television in your home, which used to be a 4x3 box. And now we have these wonderful 16:9 screens. But why are they 16:9? They're at the ratio they are now to try to be in between the TV ratio of 4x3 and the widescreen 2:1 theater experience. That's why you have a 16:9 computer monitor and a 16:9 television and all this other stuff.
Jonathan speaks the truth.
So maybe I should make the point before we decide how we're choosing to tell given stories and just say, hey, look, people, television has strived to become more and more like cinema. And as it has, cinema has slowly moved itself to become a little bit more like television.
Especially since they now expect you to watch movies on your phone.
I was thinking especially because of Marvel. Marvel is the really funny thing where it's been so successful, and it's one of the most television-like things ever. Here's an episode of this character. Come see it. It just happens to be that the episodes come out 2 or 3 times a year, as opposed to 24 episodes over the course of a year, right? The Marvel seasons are phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, which are these year-long events of multiple movies. It's kind of fascinating. Meanwhile, some of my favorite stuff on streaming TV, like Haunting of Hill House, for instance, is a completely contained story that happens in one season of television over the course of like 10 episodes. And then that story is done. It's over. There will be a season 2 of the show, but it'll be different characters in a different place, and it'll only be connected thematically, if you will, or in the sort of nature of horror or something, right? The story of those characters and those things in season 1 has come and gone. It's over, which is more finite than the Marvel movies. It's more done than the Marvel movies. which is a complete reversal of what it used to be, right? Like that's the other thing that kind of blows my mind about all this. But as I was trying to say, okay, well, go ahead.
Well, and I was thinking about, okay, well, then our two words that I'm going to propose for us is cinema and streaming, right? Like,
okay,
you either go to the cinema or you stream it somehow over the radio waves or over the internet or whatever, right? Like, it's cinema or streaming. But as I was thinking about that, I was like, but a lot of the movies that I watch are on a streaming platform of some kind.
Right. And that's what I want to get at. Is I think there's something fascinating about, because of the fact that there's a TV in your house, right? Which could be anywhere from like 30 inches to a 75-inch big screen, like that's kind of the range of TVs right now. And a movie theater, well, good. you could, but you got to be really rich and have the space. And then you've got theaters where if it's anywhere close to 108 inches, that's a lame theater. Like this thing better be feet upon feet big for your theater screen, right? And those are the two canvases that the storytelling is happening on. And it actually does affect you. It actually does change how the movie, like how the story comes across, how the effects work on you, I believe. And so when you're making a movie, right, because it's hitting that length of an hour and a half to 2 hours, 3, whatever, and it's a contained story, and you're doing it and you're releasing it on a streaming platform on our TVs, which we're all used to watching movies on our TVs now because they come out in theaters, then we buy them on DVD or Blu-ray, and now we stream them, right? But now we're releasing them straight to streaming. Is that still cinema? Is that is that different now because the canvas is different? Is it like it follows the same structure, writing, production values, whatever, but is there something different about that? Is there really a value or really a difference in seeing a movie first, at least in a theater, versus opposed to the medium of seeing a movie on a TV screen through streaming? Does that change everything for storytelling wise?
People should go back and watch our episode about the intended viewing experience.
Yes, but I do ask, do you think it makes a big enough difference that it changes things storytelling wise?
I mean, from a storytelling standpoint, I think the difference is minimal. It's definitely more of a technology that this was intended to be viewed with kind of an issue, right? So, IMAX was this huge thing when it came out because it was shooting on the biggest film ever.
70 millimeter, yep.
And no one had shot on film that was that big. We're talking about, original films were 8 millimeter, 16 millimeter, 32.
35 is the typical standard these days. Of course, now it's all digital generally.
Right. And so, from that standpoint, it's very much I don't even know where to go with that. Like, how do you define? I mean, is the difference really just, hey, we're making this so that you can go to the Dolby Atmos theater and have an experience that you can't have at your home theater? Or
I will posit something. I have recognized that a lot of these movies that come out for Netflix, like the one that's coming to my mind is it was Oscar Isaac and Ben Affleck, and it was these guys, these ex-military guys who want to go basically rip off drug dealers in like Colombia or something. And there's this movie that it's Triple Frontier. It's called Triple Frontier on Netflix. And I watched it with my buddy, and it looked like kind of like an action movie, kind of star-studded cast and released on Netflix. We're going to watch it, right? And we watched it, and it was one of those things where after watching it, I realized that, and this could be for multiple reasons, but there's action in the movie, but it's minimal. It's far more of a character study and sort of like a morality play about greed, and it's about those consequences. It's not about showing off an epic vista or showing off a crazy big spectacle action sequence or anything like that you will get in easily any Marvel movie or lots of movies that do come to the theater. Now, does every movie that comes to the theater at cinema have to be super big spectacle? No, but I feel like a lot of the movies that do come to Netflix, even if they're action movies, are sort of weirdly smaller scale, if that makes sense. They're like the way they do things is more about an action scene in a hallway versus an action scene on a freeway. Like, does that make any sense? There's some sort of scale difference, I feel like, with everything that they're doing. And maybe it's a budget concern because of the streaming platform doing all the different movies. You know, the biggest similarity I see storytelling wise is structure in movies. When they do a movie, they still follow the, a 3-act structure. They still have a beginning, middle, and end, and usually the movie's going to be its own entity that's done. Whereas television will be multiple episodes, and the structure is very different. So that's my first observation: storytelling versus the two canvases, I guess.
Yeah, and I just watched an interesting video essay about why television can be hard to end, because if you don't have the luxury of saying, here's the start and here's the end of my entire series, and this is all I'm doing, you can get lost in that. So link below if I can find it. So going back to the original question, though, Scott, with which would I choose? I would say if I have a small single idea that I want to like just kind of wander in for a while, I would probably choose the cinema type storytelling avenue. If I was going for something where I wanted to wander around an idea for a long time and kind of fiddle with this, experience, then I'd probably go on the more episodic streaming side of things. That's probably where I'd start. I remember long ago hearing that short stories make the best movies. And then if you've got something bigger, then you got to go to, the streaming side of things.
And I would agree with that. I would almost say it this way for myself, is that firstly, if I have an end in mind and I know that end of the story happens in a sense relatively quickly, then a movie can do it. I can probably make that really good. If the ending is going to happen a long time from the beginning, it's a movie, it's multiple movies, or it's a show, because I need to have the time to get through everything I need to get through to have the depth I'm looking for to get to the end of the story. So I believe in having the ending before you start with the beginning. And of course, if you don't have a ending in mind at all, and you just like this, if you're really into a world and characters, and you see a lot of you see just so much potential for all of that, and it's just thriving there, I think you're closer to having a television show or maybe a book. You've got something that's got that much potential, you can let that go. But I kind of think about it as, how long do I think I'm going to take till I get to my end? And do I see any strong, good kind of segment end breaks? Is there only a couple good segment end breaks, and there's an ending that's kind of a little bit of ways up and not too far? That might be a trilogy. I got some really strong end breaks, and I'm going to let those be their own stories into that thing. Or is it more like, this is just going to be forever before we get to the end? That's a streaming show. I need all these hours to get to the end of the story.
And in a lot of ways, this is an academic experience, because reminders for those of you who care, I make short films. But I remember an interview with the guy who created Mr. Robot, which I only watched a little of and then was like, oh, whatever. But it was interesting because he was talking about it, and he's like, I was writing and I was going to make a movie. He's like, I got 96 pages in, and I realized I had just started working on the pilot for the this story, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm writing a show instead of a movie. So I think it has to do with length in a way.
Aaron Sorkin says something similar. He wrote a movie called The American President, which starred Michael Douglas. And when he wrote that movie, he was commissioned to write that movie. He ended up writing something like 500 pages. And he was like, okay, well, I've got to find a way to trim this down for this movie. But clearly what I have here is way, way more stuff and way more situations I want to get into. And that's where the show The West Wing came from. So, that's 500 pages. And Aaron Sorkin writes long scripts as they are and all that. But he was like, this is way longer than a movie. This is way more stuff than a movie. It's going to need to be a TV show.
So what do you think,
Interesting.
Scott?
Yeah, I mean, Luke, I like I've been contemplating your thought about the way you explore an idea in cinema versus television, and the concept that in cinema it's more of a singular focused thought concept that you're exploring, where in television you have a general idea that then allows you to bounce around and explore different aspects of it in smaller chunks.
Yeah, there was a great video essay on like the perfect movie script or something like that. I'll try and link that below as well, talking about in a movie, you've got a central idea, and every character, if you're going to be really awesome, every character needs to point to that perfectly throughout the entire movie. Like, it's just this thing going.
Well, what would you say about The Haunting of Hill House? Luke, you didn't see all of it. I know you didn't get through all of it, but you saw a good chunk of it. Did you think that that was seemingly thematically always coming back to the same theme, or do you think there was multiple themes or multiple things being explored? Because again, that's a 1 season, 10 hours or whatever deal. So it's a one story thing. And I don't know that I think it necessarily jumps to a ton of different themes or anything like another television show might do, but it is very kind of focused, and I love it because I sense depth in it. I love these new streaming shows where it feels like you're getting more of episodes are chapters of a book, chapters of a story more rather than truly an episode with the beginning, middle, and end, and it's over. I kind of really love that. I love that we've been able to do that thanks to streaming. I really enjoy that. But would you say, Luke, for instance, you've had some exposure to that kind of storytelling, do you remember it being more than one theme?
Well, how do I say this? I don't know if I can say this well. I mean, obviously it's about a macro theme, but each character is exploring it in their own way, and then you, per episode or sequence in an episode, if you're following multiples, are seeing the macro theme in the context of this character's going down this journey and this character is going on this journey. Whereas I think the idea of this video essay is more, you're following a character in this movie, and all of these characters are reflecting the theme of this character's journey in some way.
So what about Parasite? Parasite, it's kind of an ensemble more, right? It's not exactly one protagonist. It's kind of the family is the protagonist. It's like the two family, and it's all very focused on thematics, right? I'll absolutely agree. It's very focused on thematics. But, you know, you are sort of going through the different characters' experiences of the same theme, just like you said in this show. There's more time in the show, but it's the same. I think it's similar. Is there something you can see, now that I'm asking this question, that would differentiate the two strongly?
That's a really good question. I think it's
there,
go, Scott.
To a certain extent, Jonathan, what we're talking about and the examples that you're pulling out are more the reasons why cinema and television are becoming basically the same thing at this point, where traditionally it's not that way. Like there was distinct differences for a long period of time between these two mediums, and now we're at a point where we've blurred the lines so much that maybe it is this and maybe it isn't.
Yes, and that's where, like, if we're going to ask the question to ourselves of which one would you choose to tell a story, because they are so blurred now, I still think, yes, if you really want to do episodic stuff, clearly you want to do a television show. Like, there's no reason to do a bunch of movies, and there's also budget kind of reasons and so on and so forth. But I find myself more and more being drawn to what streaming allows, which I find to be 10-hour movies and more depth in movies, if you will, more depth in the characters and the thematic. Like, you get to go more places and really feel it more and at your own pace. The only thing you can't do that I feel like movies still can do better than anything else, just because of the sheer amount of time, is a movie gets you to be able to do one sitting and feel like you went on a pretty crazy journey that has a finale, a resolution. And
Right.
The better the movie, the more you feel like you went on a crazy journey and you felt all that, and you understand the theme, and you went with the characters. Whereas even the best television miniseries takes at least 2, if not 3 viewings to get through to the end, which Again, I love that. I love that a lot, but it's more like a book, right? It takes more time. It takes more processing. It takes more of a continued effort as opposed to a movie where it's like, no, you went on that journey. It's over. It's done. You did it. Star Wars. You're done. You're good. Death Star. Boom. You're good.
Wait, let's make 8 more of these.
Yeah. And maybe like 2 more that are good.
Well, okay. And just thinking about this. Okay. With a show, each episode is like its thesis. Like this one is about this topic, right? Or this idea. And we're gonna tease that out within the broader, idea. Whereas like Parasite, which does have that same kind of like we're following this person, then we're getting this person's kind of view, and we're slowly unpacking what's going on. It's still one continuous narrative, and you're weaving the threads, and you're not. I mean, obviously, every scene has to have a point, and therefore it needs to have this like, what's the purpose and all this. It's an interesting video essay on that. Link below. And so, but it's not trying to get to like a resolution here, because in your show, you're building to a resolution of this idea. Whereas in a movie, I think your scenes are setting up pieces to build to a resolution at the end of this one thing. I don't know. That's a thought, and I kind of want to talk about eventually here, guys. Why? Why is film and television blending together? And I've noticed this because back when I was in film school, I was like, man, television, it's like, the naughty little sister of film, right? And
Yep.
And now it's like, well, actually, that television show is pretty good, and I don't know if I've seen a great movie lately. So like, why?
Yep.
I mean, one of my favorite superhero Marvel stories is the Daredevil TV show.
Oh my goodness, yes. Watch it.
Right? And why is that happen? Why is it blending? I mean, one excuse I've heard is that television, because of I think initially cable and HBO and things like that, allowing for television to do different things and have more adult content. And as such, people felt like they could finally do adult stories, which you could argue about whether or not you need adult content to do adult stories. But doing that, and then when you start getting into streaming being a reality, when that becomes something that's allowed, now you can do the 10-hour movie and the concept that, and you've got these new platforms that are spending money to get people to do stuff on their platform exclusively. And why is it happening? Because the writers who are good at things are going to television and have more space to do things, is what I've heard. There's creativity allowed. You can do things you can't do in a story that's a movie that, doesn't have mass appeal. You can make a more niche story in your television show and still have success. There's something about that world that has attracted quality writing and talent, and also because of the technology factor of now motion picture and movie film tech is getting cheap enough that studios trying to do television on a budget can now get close to the same quality. And if they really want to spend the money, like Game of Thrones, you can get millions of dollars an episode or whatever, and you can spend the same amount of money as one, or like half the money you would spend on one big tentpole blockbuster, have an entire season of this TV show that's on the same visual fidelity and graphics level, generally speaking, to like sets and everything. Like it is crazy. Game of Thrones, if nothing else, hate the show all you want because its ending sucks, fine. But that show was, in a way, the Lord of the Rings of television, where it was like, you can do all this now.
Yeah.
You can do all this in television. You can do it. We just did it.
Yeah.
And we did it legit, where everyone felt like it was real. We did it. You can do it now.
Yeah, and gosh, you're making me think back to this concept of like, what is the real difference? And at some point, I think I've got to draw the conclusion that at least initially, the intent of cinema is that it is actually released in a theater. for its primary viewing, where the television is primarily released for people intending to watch it on whatever home setup they have. And yeah, those lines are drawing closer to, probably not as close as the technology to create the stuff at this point, but I mean, we consume a lot more television, or we have a lot more consumption at home, especially right now, but overall than we do in the theater. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that we're trying to move more in that direction, and that studios are trying to create more content or put more content on a streaming service for that reason.
Yeah, I have to say that personally, there have been many a streaming show that I wish I had a true theater cinema-like setup in my home for, because that television show, that streaming show, kicks butt and has such great content in writing and in visual fidelity and in spectacle that it rivals all the movies that came out that year, if not beats them easily. And I want to experience it in the same way that I want to experience the best spectacle and the best storytelling, which is on the biggest screen with the best sound.
Yep. Well, I feel like we're at a point where we could continue and talk for an entire another episode on this subject. And maybe we will at another point in time, because I don't think Luke's done. I think Luke has just some crazy good ideas stirring in his head right now.
Crazy
but
good.
I would like us to end with giving a suggestion of something to our viewers to watch. And what I would like us to do for suggestions tonight is a suggestion that maybe dances on that line, but something that is more specifically television than it is cinema.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Okay, I had an idea and everything, and now I have to rethink
my
idea. Okay,
Luke,
so
let me give you your idea back.
Dancing on the edge of television.
So, Luke, there was a streaming series that we referenced earlier in this episode, and I will be very disappointed if you do not recommend it as your recommendation now.
Well, I thought that Jonathan was going to do that one.
Why don't you just do whatever you want to do, Luke, and I will figure it out from there. Because I've got at least two I could go on.
I'm going to start then while you guys are thinking about
it. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So there is a movie that I have not seen that has been recently made into a streaming series by Amazon called Hannah. This is a series that I binged a couple weekends ago and just really enjoyed where I was at. All 2 seasons of it. And I hadn't even seen the first one initially, and then I was like, oh man, there's already a second season. And as I watched through the first season, I got hooked on the characters, the depth of the characters, and I really did enjoy that as a series. I'm a little scared to go watch the movie at this point because of how much I enjoyed it as a TV series, and so I am not planning on doing that.
Good plan. I would recommend that you not watch the movie.
The movie sucks.
Okay, you go, Jonathan.
Dances on the line of cinema. That sounds like a song. I mean, it's going to be one of the two that I mentioned already, which is I really like the first and third seasons of Daredevil. They're really, and you need to watch all 3 seasons to understand the whole thing, but really good stuff. Really, really good stuff. But if you want something that's really close to the line, I think The Haunting of Hill House is more your jam, because that is truly one season, one story to the end. It plays to me more like it's got its television episodic structure. It has its beginning, middle, and end of an episode. It's got that streaming thing where it knows you're going to binge it, so it gives you that cliffhanger every time, so you want to watch the next episode. But it is one story, and it is done at the end. And I think it's actually really good. Now, perfect? No. There are things I don't like here or there. The ending is a little whatever for me at times, but overall, really good stuff.
Okay, I'm going to go totally another direction. I've been trying to kick this around, but Cowboy Bebop. It's very much a show, like literally, but then you can just go watch the movie and it feels like it's just part of it. And so that's interesting because you've got this world and these characters. And you can just, whether it's a movie or a show, I think it's probably true also for like Sword Art Online. So like, why is anime this way? Where you can just make an episode or a movie, kind of same thing. So that's interesting for me thinking about this. I don't know if I have great ideas, Scott, but my brain is definitely spinning now.
Well, I like your suggestion, Luke. I haven't seen it. Maybe I'll have to check it out. But thanks for joining us this time. We'll catch you again on the next one.
Yeah, and we're making cinema, right? No, I'm just kidding.
Podcasts, visual podcasts are totally cinema. They'll be shown in cinemas. I hope not. The quality alone. I don't want to sit that. I don't want you to sit through that in a theater. Just have it in the background. Just listen to it. Throw it up on your TVs, phone, whatever.
Yeah, and I've been ragging on the phone. It's fine to watch this on your phone. In fact, you don't even have to watch it. You can just yeah. Thank you.
But this is the level of quality we're talking about for phone use. Okay, down to our level right here.
Yeah. Come here.
Don't watch Back to the Future on your phone. Don't do it. You go see it on a theater screen. Watch it on TV at least. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on.
Have a good one, folks.